Welcome back, my fellow Aeternians. As always, it's me, Emperor AP, and I hope everybody is doing well on this Wednesday afternoon. We got 3 people viewing already. So glad to see you all in here. I saw Ari, who I haven't seen in a good long time, so it's good to see you, Ari. Hope you're doing well. Pronounced your name 2 different ways each time I said it. How are you? Hope you're doing well. I'm trying to find a way to get my phone set up, so y'all bear with me as the stream starts. Oh gosh, golly. All right. I think I'm getting it. Okay. So, nope, it's still not working that well. All right, I'm gonna have to do some fixing here. Give me just 1 second. Sorbinia. Goodness gracious. Sorry, everybody. I haven't normally streamed in my car before, so this is gonna be my first attempt doing that. It's good to see everybody. I hope the quality is significantly better. I think it should be. First, Ari joined in and said first. It's good to see you, Ari. Thanks for liking the video and trying to help us out. I see we got a like there. Sorbinia jumped in. Hello, Sorbinia. It's good to see you. We are talking about the end of the world today. We're talking about the Doomsday clock, which has been set to 90 seconds to midnight. Last year was the closest it had ever been to midnight. Midnight meaning an apocalypse. And this is just experts in different fields around the world who have come together as a collective to decide essentially this press release saying, hey, we're concerned about the state of the world. It was originally set up, I think, during the Cold War to be an alarming, message to the world that says, hey, we got to stop what we're doing or else we could end in nuclear annihilation or some sort of cataclysmic world-ending apocalypse. So, that being the case, they created this thing, the Doomsday Clock, to let people know as it approaches midnight how close we are to the end of the world. And this is something that can move further or closer away. And as of right now, we are the closest it's ever been. Last year during COVID, we were at 100 seconds to midnight, and people were very concerned about that. And people were coming out, experts around the world were saying, hey, this is a big concern. We need to take things more seriously with climate change, with, our regards to foreign policy and war. We need to be much more serious and really hold each other accountable as far as ensuring that we all keep humanity safe. And now we are 10 seconds closer to midnight. We've moved from 100 to 90, which is the closest it's ever been, even during the Cold War, even during the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the closest we have ever been, according to the people who create that standard, as to the end of the world. So that being the case, what do you all think about that? Do you feel like the world could end in the next few years? Like, what do you think is happening with all this? And does it concern you as a micronation? I know as micronations, everybody's trying to do their own thing, trying to build their own standards, trying to speak out for what they believe in. And when these macronations are doing things that put not only your nation, but the entire existence of humanity at risk, how does that make you feel? And what does that mean for the future of your nation? Do you prepare for things like that? Is your micronation a group of people who are like preppers, like the people that you see on TV who build, bunkers and hide in their basement and stockpile food? Are you, petitioning the government to try and speak out about these things? What are your thoughts? Do you feel like the Doomsday Clock is just ridiculous and not worth your time? What's the thought? Ari says, hey, quality is way better. I'm glad to hear, Ari. That being the case, you guys who just jumped in, definitely give us a like, but jump down in the comments. I really want to talk to people. I want to see what's going on. And also, at some point soon, I want to start trying to do the connections. So there's a way that I can actually send people the link to our streams, so that way we can stream side by side and I can talk to people while we're doing the stream. So we might have guests on sometimes that can join into conversations like this one about the end of the world, that can participate in this and give some real insights. So the more that you guys participate, the more that I know that that's that crowd interaction, that kind of debate or conversation is really something that you guys want. And so we can incorporate that more and more into the streams as time goes on. Ari says, wait, is 90 seconds this year or last year? So last year we were at 100 seconds to midnight and people were freaking out. Midnight is supposedly the end of the world as far as the Doomsday Clock standard goes. And now we are at 90 seconds. They moved it 10 seconds closer to midnight. I have no idea what it takes to get to like 10 seconds to midnight or whatever. I'm curious if you have to be like declaring nuclear war for that to happen, but that seems wild. So Benia says they are predicting that a truly catastrophic solar flare will hit around 2025. That is scary. I'm curious to see how they track that. I know events like that, cosmic events like solar flares are something that's more easily tracked. So if it is something like that, maybe that gives us some hope. Maybe that's something that, hey, if the world were to end because of a solar flare, we would have time to know about that and try to prepare. One of the huge problems with something like a solar flare event ending the world is the fact that our power grid is not prepared for it. We saw last year when COVID hit and there was massive power outages in places like Texas, where their power grid was just absolutely overwhelmed. It had been overwhelmed before for years and years, and people kept trying to tell the Texas governor, hey, Governor, I think it's Governor Abbott, who's the governor of Texas, you have to fix this. You have to update your government's infrastructure because it's not going to maintain. There were people who were in the Texas power grid who were saying, hey, you can't do this. Engineers saying, hey, you have to fix this. You have to update it. You have to buff this power grid because it's going to cause catastrophic failures. And people who were on like heart monitors, people who were on like dialysis machines and stuff like that, people who were on breathing machines died during that event because power was lost. It was in the middle of winter. People froze in their homes. It was a big deal. There were deaths because of Texas's power outages, and it was stuff that could have been completely avoided because they hadn't updated their grid in years to the quality and the standard that it needed to be. I think I read an article that said something like, the standards that the Texas power grid was built for was for like the 80s or 90s. The amount of power consumption that each home was going to use was to the standards of like the 80s or 90s, and now we're in the 2020s, people using 5-10 times more power than they would have at that time in their homes, running different devices, powering different machines in their homes, and running electric vehicles, charging them, things like that, and no backup plan for that. So that's a huge problem. And apocalypses like that, while theoretically they'd be the best because you could potentially prepare for them, in the United States, for example, we don't have that preparation ongoing. So that's something that we really have to do as a nation to prepare for things like that. Real quick, hey, what's going on? So Vincent joined us and said, good evening, Mr. AP. What's going on, Vincent? How are you? Also, we have 8 viewers, 3 likes. Thank you guys for liking the video. It means a lot. Anytime you guys jump in, if you can like the video, it helps to share it to more people so that people who are wanting to watch our videos and who may be a part of our audience but just don't see the notifications for some reason, YouTube doesn't target them, it helps them to get seen. So thank you. Okay, real quick, Ari says, my stance on this is that the Doomsday Clock shouldn't be about stockpiling food. Shouldn't be about stockpiling food. Do that anyway in case of emergencies, but to take actions. Agreed. A lot of the time, that is what, so the Doomsday Clock itself doesn't really tell people how to prepare for that. The Doomsday Clock more so is a warning. It's saying, hey, we're in concerning times right now. It's a metaphor for how dangerous a situation the world is in and how likely society is to collapse, for example, or for humanity to stop existing. And that's certainly a very scary prospect, but it is, again, a metaphor that an organization puts out as a warning, as their interpretation of how scary the world is at the moment. White Wind said, sorry, I'm looking at other people. Vincent says, weren't we closer to midnight in 2020 and in 1962? Look it up and let me know. I may be misinformed. The article I read, I just read something before I jumped on the stream, said that this was the closest we have ever been. Since the clock's creation, this is the closest to midnight we have ever been. I don't think, according to that article, we have never been closer to midnight. Excuse me, guys, I know that's gross. But let me know. Like, Vincent, if you find something, please update me and inform me thusly. Wagnerland said, wait, what's happening? So there's a group that put out something called the Doomsday Clock, which is a metric essentially saying how dangerous the world is, how close humanity is to pushing itself over an apocalyptic brink, at a point that we can't come back from, effectively either collapsing society or ending humanity as we know it. And so that doomsday clock has been put out year after year, essentially saying how many seconds to midnight we are, or in non-metaphorical terms, how close we are to an apocalypse. And so this organization that puts it out has said that we are now at 90 seconds to midnight, which according to the article that I read about it is the since the clock's creation that we have ever been to midnight. The last record for it was in 2022, I think, when they set it at 100 seconds to midnight, which was the previous record for the closest it had ever been to midnight. And now jumping back to 2023, we are at 90 seconds to midnight. At the start of the year, Ari says, I'm wondering how this works. Would the clock be based off of last year? So it's right. The clock is something that can be moved further or closer to midnight. The clock isn't actually keeping time in any way. It's a metaphor for how close we are to the end of the world. According to this organization that puts it out, it's not based on any scientific standard. It's just based on their interpretation of world politics, and just the state of affairs of humanity in general. So it takes account things like the climate crisis, like pandemics like COVID. It takes into account wars like the escalations in Ukraine and Russian aggression. It takes all of that into account and says, hey, based on nuclear war, based on pandemic, based on cataclysmic events from climate change, how close are we to an apocalypse? And last year, it was set at 100 seconds to midnight, which was the closest it had ever been to an apocalyptic type event. Now it is set to 90 seconds to midnight. So they're saying, hey, we are the closest we've ever been in the creation of this clock's history to an apocalyptic event. They're saying things are really, really scary right now in the world. And that, again, is this one international organization's viewpoint on the state of affairs of humanity. I am certainly concerned about that, and I think that's something that's probably not too far off. With all of the things that we're experiencing today in the world, there's a ton of reasons to be concerned. Of course, there's a ton of reasons to be happy and grateful about our lives as individuals, but the nations that we are in, the way that the groups of people that we participate in, the societies we live in are interacting, are not good. They're dangerous and they're scary. Again, things like these wars that continue to happen, specifically the war in Ukraine, but in general, the concept of escalating tensions globally, economic embargoes, and the concern for increased scarcity because of climate change on different foodstuffs is all very, very concerning. Torrance says, AP, I recorded a 1-minute video explaining the project. Does that seem to suffice? I certainly think it depends on how you want to pitch your thing, but I wish you luck, Torrance. Prince Torrance. Ari says, Wagnerland, we're talking about the Doomsday Clock. It's a metaphoric thing made by scientists to spread awareness of climate change and political stuff. Yep, that's a great description, Ari. Sorbenia says, also, Yellowstone is on a heightened watch right now, more than it has ever been. So that may be another thing that it takes into account, absolutely. Would you be concerned if Yellowstone erupted? Like, do you think that's a doomsday event we could be facing? Let us know. Also, we got 9 viewers, 7 likes. Thank you guys for the likes. It means a lot. Ari says, how would it be possible to improve power grids? I think it's digging cables and stuff takes a lot of money, time, and effort. It sure does take a lot of money, time, and effort. You're right. It would be improving things like cables that are run. There are plenty of situations where, for example, there was a hook that held a power line that they looked at last year when some of this stuff was going on, that they said hadn't been replaced in like 50 years or something. Like, it was like crumbling. The metal itself had rusted and worn away so much from this line, like digging at it, that it was like on the verge of breaking. So there's stuff like that that's just like going through and checking the equipment to make sure it's functioning properly. Doing things like putting weather protective coatings on things, doing things like removing the power lines that only allow for smaller power, and applying things with a thicker gauge, for example, to handle more current, more power going through it. You can do things like upgrading and modernizing your transformer stations. So the actual places where power is distributed is something that's really important, because you can have multiple backups. For example, uh, if a if a certain area is getting power that's normally distributed from one power station, but in the event of an emergency, there's places like hospitals in this district that are going to need emergency power. There may be ways to reroute power to supply that. Now, a lot of places like that, of course, hospitals generally have their own emergency power systems, but that's only going to last for a very small amount of time. So being able to apply, rerouted power, being able to update and modernize your electrical grid is something that is necessary for being able to help assist essential functions like that of your society. So sure, those are absolutely expenses that a state has to take on, but it's much cheaper to fix it before a catastrophic disaster than to try and do it afterward, because afterward those lines are already destroyed, so nobody can get power. It's not like when you're doing a repair, you can say, oh, I'll shut off power to this area, we'll dig the lines out and then turn them back on, or potentially route power from somewhere else so that there are less delays. Once a failure has happened, it may affect multiple things in the grid, because these are all electrical circuits. So if you have one place that fails, it may cause other things to fail, or other things to react in a way that's unexpected, especially if you haven't been monitoring and updating those things regularly. So what may have been a $12 million fix to do initially could become a $400 million fix after the fact. So that's something really, really important to keep in mind. But that's a great question, Ari. Michael Ryan says, hey, Michael Ryan, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing well, and I'm curious to know your thoughts on the potential impending doom of the world. We are at 90 seconds to midnight, according to the Doomsday Clock. White Wind says in 1962 it was 7 minutes to midnight. So wow, things are far worse. Yes, 7 minutes to midnight, which would be, let me see, 420 seconds to midnight would have been in 1962, and we're now 90 seconds to midnight. So many times worse currently. Yes, we are the closest we've ever been, according to their estimates. Raspberry says, hello. Hey, what's going on, Raz? It's good to see you. Raspberry Key Man, haven't seen you in a stream in a minute. I'm glad to hear from you, and I'm curious to know your thoughts. Michael Ryan says, Russia, North Korea, China, terrorist groups, and new viral outbreaks, as well as political chaos, factor in. I think that's a great point there, Michael. It's also something that we can mitigate. These are all, like, these things that we're talking about are all things that we can help. Of course, there are always going to be terrorist groups. There are always going to be groups in geopolitics that are at odds with each other, and there's not going to be a solution to solving everyone's problems. But we can do things to ease tensions. We can do things that set us up to where, even if there are rivals in the world, even if there are conflicts in the world, we're not constantly at the brink of major catastrophe. We can do things that assist and support those in need, and allow us to continue to grow as a society without being at each other's throats. And I think that's the concerning question here. Eastern Valley said, live in New Zealand. Live in New Zealand. Hey, what's going on, Eastern Valley? It's good to see you. Thank you for joining us all the way in New Zealand. Tell us, first off, how you're feeling about things in New Zealand. I don't know much about the geopolitics there, but you are near, China, you're near Russia, you're near, I guess you're not near them because you're kind of far away, but there's still a lot going on the eastern side of the world. So let us know your thoughts. How do you feel living in New Zealand? I know was it the Prime Minister of New Zealand just stepped down? Tell us your thoughts. Tell us how you're feeling about the state of the world. And do you feel like New Zealand is 90 seconds to midnight? Or do you feel like you have things a little easier there? Arik24 says, good afternoon. Hey, Arik, it's good to see you. I don't think I've ever seen you in a stream before, so you got to let us know if you feel prepared for a potential apocalypse or if you think it's all hooey. Michael Ryan says, a scary thought. Governments aren't pushing this triggers. Oh, we absolutely already have. That's something that's been discussed already. There was a specific point, I forget what it is. There's something like a 5-degree change in in temperature, a 5-degree increase in temperature, that once you exceed that for the average temperature of the world, yearly average temperature of the world, things become incredibly dangerous. And you start a cascading effect of climate problems that don't get fixed. They're not like, a hole in the ozone layer or something that can be patched over time. These are things that are kind of irreversible effects to our environment. And that's something that has already happened. We've already surpassed that, I believe. And so we're now in a situation where we're riding out year by year this ever-changing climate that we're dealing with. And it's something that's very scary for a lot of people, especially people in really extreme environments. People who live in desert environments, people who live in very, very cold environments are going to see their climate change more and more extremely every single year, and they're going to have to deal with that in their food supplies. They're going to have to deal with that in their critical infrastructure, like Texas, a place that is primarily very, very hot, getting so cold that their power grid shuts down because it can't handle it. Those are things that are going to get increasingly worse. Places like Louisiana that, have lost miles and miles of their coastline every single year are now going to be even worse. There are going to be places that people grew up in, people born in the year 2000 who in the 2030s, 2040s will not be able to go back to their hometowns because they're going to be underwater. These are things that are devastating effects of climate change. The country Tuvalu, is it Tuvalu? There is a country that is one of the world's smallest countries, and is in fact now becoming a virtual nation. They petitioned the US to become an entirely virtual nation because their island is about to be completely submerged under the water due to climate change. Everybody's homes who lives there, the entire government infrastructure is collapsing because they won't exist anymore as a society. It's going to be completely submerged under the ocean. And so now they have to deal with that fact, and they have to figure out a way to maintain a society without a place that is independently theirs. And so that raises huge questions for those citizens, people who were once protected by this government that they supported and had homes that they invested in and built lives around, who are now having to flee those homes and go to other countries and say, hey, I'm still a citizen of this other country that doesn't exist physically anymore and I can't go back to when the government is dispersed from, but I want to keep my rights from there, and I want to keep, being guaranteed that I'm going to be treated well while I live in your society. And that may be a concern because those other countries that they go to may not recognize that, may not validate that, and there would be no way for those people to defend their rights in that way. So that's very scary and that's very concerning, and I think as the years go on, we're going to see more and more stories just like that. Republic of Unity says, hello AP, hello Republic of Unity, it's great to see you. Also, thank you for watching our live stream, and if you like it, please like it for us so that we can spread the word to more people and get more people hanging out with us and talking about the potential end of the world. White One says, I've been doing a lot of research on the Great Depression and the, quote, Hoovervilles that were built as a result of the economic depression. So what's Aeternia's plan for an event like that? Well, so we have been in situations that are really interesting. I read something not too long ago, and I wish I had all the stuff here in front of me. I need to save more bookmarks. But I read something not too long ago that said that the economic situation we're in currently in the U.S., with the large difference in wages and in economic value between the richest people in the U.S. and the poorest people in the U.S., is such that during economic difficulties, like, during recessions, like we're kind of starting to go through now, we're not able to bounce back as well as we used to. Even during the Great Depression, right after the Great Depression, the U.S. economy was able to bounce back fairly well, and most people were able to find jobs pretty easily. The people who are now baby boomers and stuff like that, who are growing up, the people who went through the Great Depression, or their parents went through the Great Depression, they had a middle class. They had the comfortable understanding that, hey, even though the Great Depression just happened, all of this is crazy, the economy's value has tanked, I can still go out and purchase a home. I can still put my money and time and effort into things that are going to, over decades, build value and equity for my family. Now we don't have that anymore. It's even for somebody who makes, $80, $90, $100,000 a year, they may not be able to buy a home. in the future. People who are going to college now may not be able to afford a home in the future because there are so few available and at such high prices that's going to continue that trend upward. It's to a point now where large corporations are buying individual homes because it's easier and cheaper for them to rent those homes and increase the price steadily every year than it would be for them to sell them, because there's not more land that's being made. In fact, with the destruction and horrible things that are happening because of climate change, we're losing land mass on the earth constantly, just being submerged under the water thanks to the melting ice caps. So there's a situation where land is becoming more and more scarce, and it's becoming harder and harder to find in places that aren't already occupied. So you're seeing more and more people move to more rural areas to try and buy up that property, and then those people getting kicked out. There's a term called gentrification. That's something that is routinely discussed, where wealthy businesses will move into poorer neighborhoods, buy up all the properties, and raise rent prices so much that the people who are already there can no longer afford to live there. And that happens routinely all around the country. And so when you talk about places like, you talk about the U.S. economy, you talk about Hoovervilles and things like that, this is something that's happening in an even more scary way, because when you talk about those Hoovervilles, you're talking about situations where there are groups of people who are more impoverished, and you can kind of know. There was a Star Trek episode a long time ago where they thought that the 2020s would be this really sad state where there were pockets in every city of like mass homeless camps, and they were like, yeah, society won't take care of their people, so they just shove them all into a corner. The scary thing is that's not what's happening at all. What's actually happening is those places don't exist because cities will kick people out. You don't have mass camps of homeless people. You have individual homeless people who are trying to find a place to survive, because anytime they try and lay down to sleep somewhere, a police officer comes and kicks them out or throws them in jail for sleeping there. It's a very scary situation where if you have a job that pays you a set amount every single year, and you have a hard time getting a raise, and every year your rent keeps increasing, and the price of food and the price of gas and the price of clothes excuse me, and everything else keeps increasing, and the price of health insurance. So if you go to the doctor and you get cancer or something, all of a sudden now you're paying thousands and thousands in medical bills, even if even though you have insurance. It's something where at a certain point, even for people who are making a modest living, you are not able to survive. And so you go from this situation where you had a decent home and you had a place to call your own, to all of a sudden not being able to afford it and having nowhere to go and having no one that will support you. So that's something that's very scary, and something that the future generations, talking about my generation is, Gen Z sort of stuff, going all the way into our children's generation and their children, may not have much of a leg to stand on if we're not careful. Plenty of people talk about right now that they just won't be able to get that equity back. And that's the thing that's scarier than the Great Depression, is the fact that even in the Great Depression, there were still things that could be invested in. There were still things that could give you long-term equity and long-term value that you could pass on to your children. Now there really isn't the opportunity for that. Everybody is stuck in a situation where their value as an individual is decreasing, but the value of everything around them is increasing. So it's a very dangerous time to live in. Ari says, Michael Ryan, good point, best we can do is prevent more change. Agreed, Ari. The best thing we can do is to try to maintain as much stability in the climate crisis as we can, and to try and make ourselves as robust a society as we can to prevent those effects from causing mass change internal to our societies. We can't necessarily fix the fact that it's going to get colder every year in Texas during the winter because of the effects of climate change. But what we can do is say that we're going to protect our infrastructure, like those grids, those power grids, to make sure that when those cold winter chills come, it doesn't shut down our entire society and kill people. Sorbenia says, what is quite scary is that if you think about it, is that a zombie-like fungus could evolve to be able to withstand warmer climate, which means they could possibly infect humans. Absolutely. There are plenty of unforeseen consequences to our own biology and to the environment that we live in, the ecosystems that we have developed that are radically changing. That's a hypothetical example. A real-time, actual example that's happening right now is the fact that the honeybee populations are dying. There are not just honeybees, there are plenty of flora and fauna. For example, birds, migratory birds that are constantly being killed in the U.S. And around the world that don't have a way to replenish their population. And those migratory birds and bees and things like that are things that are pollinators. They're things that help play a vital role in ensuring our food supply maintains abundancy and maintains enough diversity to be able to survive mass droughts, mass, disease, things like that, infections that are not being protected as well anymore. So as those species die out, they have a direct impact on how well we can survive, and we're not protecting them. First off, 11 viewers, 11 likes. Thank you guys for the likes and supporting the channel. And I really hope you guys are enjoying the feedback and the back and forth we're having here, because I like these takes. These are some hot takes. Raspberry says, but it would likely stay for smaller insects as they are easier to, control and manipulate. The cordyceps fungus. Agreed. Michael Ryan says, message retracted. Raspberry says, bye, have a nice one. I'm guessing to Michael Ryan, who retracted the message. Sorbenia says, Raz, true, but still possible. Agreed. Raz says, I guess if anything, we should look into rabies or CWD evolutions and mutations. Absolutely. Plenty of viruses and bacteria mutate every year, and groups like the CDC keep as good a track on that as they can. But it's still scary. Arc24 says, I can say that if an apocalyptic event happens, it will not be easy for me as an individual. As a service member, it would be very annoying. I imagine it would be. If you're a service member, that's something especially concerning, because not only are you trying to maintain your own family and your own society's security, but you're going out of the way to have to help other people, whether in your society or wherever you're stationed. And so that's something that's very concerning, is that you would constantly have to deal with this back and forth situation of, well, I hope everybody in my family and my friends are doing okay, but I'm out here trying to help everybody else. So the unfortunate and scary situation is that you could be going and doing a lot of good everywhere else, and then come back home and realize that people weren't necessarily doing the same for you and your people. So that's very scary, and I wish you the best of luck. I hope that you can keep us updated on what you're going through. Raz says, I heard about that. It's incredibly sad. I mean, what do refugees do? Would they be accepted as citizens of a foreign nation? I'm not sure. That's a great question. There are, for example, several nations around the world that require you to retract your citizenship for theirs. So if you were to apply for citizenship in certain places, you would have to renounce your, I think it's Tuvaluan citizenship in order to become a citizen of wherever you're trying, like Sweden or Norway or something. One of those countries does not allow you to maintain dual citizenship. So that would be something certainly very scary. Let's say, your country says, hey, we're now a digital nation, but you still get to keep your rights so long as you keep your citizenship. And then the countries that you apply to say, well, hey, you can't be a citizen of ours until you renounce your Tuvaluan citizenship. Eventually you're pushing people to renounce their culture. Eventually these people are going to fade out and disappear. And I think that's what we've seen happen to societies, in history, where you read about a society and it says, oh, they just kind of collapsed and we don't know what happened to them. It's not that they just all faded into nothing. They had to join other societies, and they became a part of those other societies' cultures. They got assimilated, and so they weren't able to maintain their culture and their traditions like they had been when they had their own unique society to do that. So that's very scary, and that's something that I think we're going to see happen with Tuvalu, that they may be able to preserve archaeologically, in some sense, a concept of what their society was like through this virtual nation, but they will lose the people that built that. They will lose the actual citizens, the people who made it possible to define that as a lifestyle, to define that as a culture. And so it would just be relegated, excuse me, designated as a piece of history and nothing more. And that's weird and that's scary. Sorbinia says, I've got to go. I'll be back in a bit. See you, Sorbinia. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you do join us in a minute. We're going to be streaming for a little while, so hopefully we can get a good number of watch time hours. Whitewind said, I made it to a live! Finally! I'm glad you like it, Whitewind. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining us. We have missed you, and I know we have a lot of conversations to catch up on. Whitewind says, the United States has been in a recession for about 16 years. I didn't know about that. Where are you getting these facts? Hit us up with those receipts, homeboy. Eastern Valley says, I didn't say I live in New Zealand. I just said to live in Zealand because I think it's the best place to live in an apocalypse. That makes sense. It's an island. It's away from a lot of like bigger targets for like nuclear attacks and stuff. That makes sense. A pretty tropical climate. You just have to be careful that it doesn't start going underwater as well. But I think they have a pretty high elevation. They have mountains and stuff there. So, yeah, New Zealand may be a good one. Joshua Orkin, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a live stream in a minute. This is Joshua Orkin, a citizen of the country. I haven't been on for a while because I've been in Africa battling Ebola. Oh, gosh. First off, hello, Joshua. I hope you're doing well. Secondly, what's going on with you battling Ebola? Did you personally have Ebola? Are you okay? Have you been helping other people in Africa dealing with Ebola? Let us know. Also, what's your thoughts on this apocalypse situation? Raz says, of the sinking island? Yes, the citizens of the sinking island are like gonna lose their citizenship. They're not losing their citizenship. They're petitioning the UN effectively to become like a virtual nation, but some of these people are like, the people are still losing their homes and stuff physically, so they're gonna have to become a part of other countries just to survive, purchase property, get their kids education, stuff like that. Whiteman says, would micronational empires end up joining macronational wars through owning a trained militia? Would they become recognized by the government they were fighting for? I'm not sure that they really would. There are micronationalists who are military service members. I know that. I've seen that before. And so I think a lot of the time those people generally either put their micronational activities on pause or just draw a clear line of distinction between their macronational identity and their micronational identity. I think that's kind of difficult and a little bit strange to do because of the potential conflict of interest there, but I definitely can understand why. Elijah Wood said, hey, what's going on, Elijah? Union of Allied Soviet Republics. Haven't seen you in a minute. Said, hey, man, long time no see. I know it, right? We're hitting up these live streams again, so it's good to see y'all. Michael Ryan said, AP, it's worth noting that the U.S. federal debt would cost each individual citizen $100,000 to pay off today. That's staggering, not to mention untenable. Less of a middle class magnifies the problem. Agreed, 100%. You know who could severely help lower that debt? All the billionaires hoarding it, keeping it all to themselves. 99% of the wealth in the U.S. is held by less than 1% of the population. So I think if you just moved that huge stockpile of unused wealth into the hands of people who can create small businesses, who can develop infrastructure, who are going to be the ones interested in paying their taxes so that they can get things done for the people around them instead of living in, huge gated communities and, shut off islands to themselves and jet setting around the world. You could have sincere change in these communities on a local level that would affect the ability of individual citizens to live a more productive life and therefore pay back into the system to start lowering that debt. You can't lower debt without an increase in the value creation of a society. And so when a society is constantly running on trying to prop up corporations that are not continuing to provide added benefit but are just trying to increase their stakeholder value, you're doing nothing but playing with the numbers on a computer screen. You're not actually creating value for the lives of the individuals. You're in fact taking it away from them, which will have large scale consequences, as we see with the US debt, as we see with a lot of issues currently in the United States. Whiteman says, my parents don't even have $10,000 to their name. I can agree with that. I'm in the exact same boat. My parents do not either. I do not either. That is something that's very, very scary. One of the things that's important to note, People say all the time in the U.S., oh, if you don't like the U.S., why don't you just leave the U.S.? Most people in the United States, this is a fact, this is like a statistic you can look up, do not have $1,000 as in their savings account. So they may have $1,000 in their checking account. They may have $1,000 that kind of fluctuates up and down, as they're spending money on bills and stuff like that. Very, very few Americans the majority of Americans, at very least, have less than $1,000 in their savings accounts. It costs between like $800, I think at the cheapest, to like $5,000 to apply for and get accepted for citizenship anywhere in the world. You cannot apply for, get citizenship, do the whole process cheaply at all, for under $1,000. US. These people who are struggling every day of their lives and who are begging for the system to be better for them, they can't just leave. They don't have the power to fight back. They don't have the money to fight back, and they don't have the power to leave. So they're stuck in this situation, and it's becoming worse and worse for them every day. This is a huge, huge problem. Union of Allied Soviet Republics is mine neither, and that's a huge problem in micronationalism that I think is why people cling to micronationalism and want to see it be impactful for them so badly, because people are suffering, because people want a better life. Michael Ryan says, dinner and a movie here. Later, y'all. See you, Michael Ryan. I hope you enjoy your dinner and the movie, and I hope you get to do it with some people you care about. So we wish you well, and we can't wait to see you next time. Raz says, bye. Telling Michael bye. See you, Michael. Eastern Valley says, help the homeless. Do what the government doesn't and help them. Absolutely. That's something that in our area in particular, we've been like thinking about and trying to figure out. So there are like soup kitchens around here. There are places that go out of their way specifically to help the homeless, and we may want to partner with them in some way. I want to learn more about what the rules are around it, though, because I have seen, it wasn't in this area in particular, but I believe it was in the state of Alabama. There have been people who are like arrested and like fined and stuff for like feeding homeless people and stuff, and for like giving them things. So I don't know that that would necessarily be a problem in our area, but I do want to look into it, what the rules and regulations are around, like setting up shop somewhere, trying to help people out, what the most effective way to help people is as well. Like we don't have a food truck, so we wouldn't be able to prepare like hot food. We could potentially like make sandwiches and give people sandwiches and stuff like that, but I don't know like the legality of that. We could just like, it's winter time right now, but it's starting to like fade out of winter time, so warm clothes, blankets, things like that would be important, but obviously right now there's not a ton. The need for that is becoming less and less as it gets warmer and as it gets out of the winter. But yes, we absolutely do want to do that, and that's something that we're trying to figure out. Union of Allied Soviet Republics says, see you, man. If you guys have any information, by the way, or like any links, any ideas that you want to pop by, throw them in the Discord, hit us up. DM me if you have to. Email us at eternianempire@gmail.com. I want to try and figure out more stuff and get more research compiled about how the best way to actually help the homeless is. What's going to create the most effect. Union of Allied Soviet Republic says, yeah, our nation is in Texas, and we certainly are afraid of the power grid going down again. Absolutely. Also, you guys being in Texas, did you get hit by the the tornado? How are you guys doing? I saw some Micronations posting about the tornado that came through. I hope you guys are doing all right there. Raz says, that sucks. Yes, absolutely. Whiteman says, POV, you need weatherproof power grid. Yes, 100%. And the POV for that is just darkness. The POV is just this. No, not even that. Hold on. Oh, I can't make it dark enough. I can't even make it dark enough to simulate what people who need a revamped power grid even look like. Elijah Wood says, not just honeybees, a lot of our native bees are going extinct. Oh, absolutely. The bumblebee is so cute and fat, and is also a pollinator, and is not doing well. Ari says, even chicken eggs are high due to a chicken flu. Yes, absolutely. And the way that we keep livestock. I was watching videos about that as well, where they're saying, hey, The reason that, chicken egg prices have increased is because of the fact that we have these huge chicken farms which are trying to be the most profitable, so they cram, thousands of chickens into one living space, like pressed up against each other physically. And so if one bird gets sick, they have to kill all of their birds, throw them away, can't use that meat anymore because they're sick, can't give it to anybody, can't risk any of the eggs. So you're wasting all of that. You're getting rid of all of it, cleaning the place down, scrubbing it, and then starting brand new with fresh chickens and importing them, all to try and get your chicken stock back up. So not only does that create huge delays for supermarkets and things, it also jacks up the price. And that's something very scary. Whitewind says, oh, hi, Ari. Raz says avian flu, I think. Yeah, it's a real thing. And that's another thing that's, again, ways we could be and should be bolstering our power grid, should be bolstering our economy to protect ourselves from the ravages of climate change and of disease that are constantly going to be affecting us as humans. And yet we're trying to preserve profit over practical solutions to our problems. Vincent said, I think something the Micronations should focus on, knowledge and food production. Because if society collapses, Micronations have systems in place to ensure safety of people who lost it all to a crisis. I completely agree, Vincent, and that's something that is sincerely concerning. It's something concerning because we are, small groups of people who really believe in something. We're trying to make these new societies, and we're trying to do so generally because we're upset about the society that we come from. So you're right, trying to make yourself as knowledgeable as you can on things like food production, on things like, electrical energy generation, on things like, water purification, on things like, small scale manufacturing. Those are things that are going to be imminently needed, not only in the case of an apocalypse, but just in the case of local catastrophe. You know what I mean? A power grid failure. If you have a generator, if you have solar panels, you're going to be the person that people in your neighborhood are looking to. If you have the ability to create biofuel for yourself, and you're able to drive your car when other people can't get to the gas station because there's no deliveries because of a trucking strike or something like that, or a mass economic downturn, people are going to be looking to you for fuel to run their generators, to run their vehicles. The problem with the way that our society is set up right now is that any one collapse in a part of the system has massive effects on everything else. One of the huge issues is transportation. In the U.S. in particular, one of our main linchpins of our society is the trucking industry. We get, most of our things delivered via large 18-wheeler trucks that are transporting goods and services around. And so when there is a problem with fuel prices, the trucking industry in general, any kind of issue with infrastructure, road collapses, bridges collapsing, things like that, that shuts down a huge portion of our economy. Because, if the truck delivering your eggs can't bring eggs to the supermarket, guess what? There's no eggs. If, the truck bringing the supplies for to repair from a natural disaster break down, then guess what? You're going to have delays on fixing that natural disaster, like the power grid. It all connects back to itself, and it really sucks that we're not bolstering any of these systems. And I think the reason is because a lot of the practical solutions for these problems would be to do things that many consider more socialist activities. If you were to, provide specific sections of the government that's entire job is to maintain that and to do it adequately and to make sure they are well and can't be cut below a certain minimum critical value, would not have those issues. We would not have those repeat and constant issues because there would be money for routine maintenance and evaluation. There would be checks for the overall safety of the U.S. power grid as well as individual power grids in different states, and similar setups for different industries, for different groups and sections of the economy. But we're not doing that. Lightwind says we get our eggs for free. Congratulations, Lightwind. I think more of us need to be on whatever train you're on. Union of Allied Soviet Republics says, yes, we have chickens that produce our eggs. We share them around the community, trying to help out a bit. That's a great thing to do, and I'm sure it does mean a lot to the people who are getting them. United Kingdom of New England said, good morning, Your Imperial Majesty AP, and how are you today, Your Imperial Majesty? I'm doing well, United Kingdom of New England. How are you doing? And how's Australia this time of year? White One says, I'm like 4 minutes behind because of the internet. So much snow. Oh, goodness. How is it going over there? Christian, hey, it's good to see you. Christian says, hello there, I'm afraid this is going to be brief for me, but I decided to drop in on the live stream to give the live stream a look on my break. Hey, well, I hope you're enjoying the conversation, and I appreciate you thinking about us, Christian. Liking the video, dropping your comments like you are there, it really does mean a lot, and honestly, just helping out the conversation and keeping it going is huge for us. So I appreciate you, Christian, for helping the channel out and supporting us, and again, to everybody else who can. When you listen to the stream, when you watch it, the longer you can help us out and keep our viewer count up, the more watch time hours you get, which helps us toward monetization. So you really are every second making a big difference in our channel and in turn our nation. So thank you. United Allied of Soviet Republic says, wish we got snow. We just got flooded and some tornadoes down south in Houston. Absolutely. That's what I was asking about. Like, you guys being in Texas, how are you guys doing? Did the tornadoes miss you? It makes it sound like it did, but still, the flooding doesn't sound good. White One says, haha, I'd rather tornadoes. I don't know. Oh, goodness, they both sound bad. Raz says, me in Florida. Yes, snow. Sneeko, like, just not being able to pronounce it. I hadn't seen snow for a long time. Coming to where I live now is really the first time I had gotten to experience snow fairly regularly. We get snow at least a little bit just about every year. Elijah said, gotta go. Oh, I'm sorry, Elijah. It's good to see you. I hope you have a great evening, and I can't wait to see you again. I miss you, and I've been thinking about you. It's great to see you in a stream. Kingdom of Adam said, Chile is good. Chile is a good place for an apocalypse. Like, it's a good place for an apocalypse to occur, or it's a good place to survive an apocalypse. You have to hit me up. Isn't Chile like a very mountainous place? It's like a long strip in the Andes Mountains, I think. So potentially, as well, you wouldn't be, if it is the country I'm thinking of in South America that, has that long strip all the way down to the bottom of South America, you'd also be close to the South Pole. Like, it'd still take you a while to travel there, but theoretically, if you had to escape in an apocalypse, you could, potentially escape to the South Pole. Whiteman says, actually from an ex-FBI agent. My aunt is friends with one, and they were talking about it while I was eating. Oh, goodness, that's interesting. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. Raz says, bye, Elijah. Good to see you, Elijah. Kingdom of Adam. Ooh, 18 likes, 12 viewers. Thank you guys for helping pump the stream up. Again, talking about the apocalypse, talking about all of this is absolutely crazy, but I think it's necessary for us as micronations because we're the ones trying to fix this. We're the ones trying to offer solutions for these problems. So if we can't come together and start to discuss the concept and start to actually react to what these macronations are doing, how do we hope to provide those solutions? How do we hope to be the torchbearers for the next generation? Kingdom of Adam says, pepping/con plans are good for the longevity or stratification for any nation, and then he corrected to prepping. Yeah, I agree. Prepping can be important. I don't think you should overdo it, but I don't think you should ignore it either. It's one of those insurance policies, I suppose. Whiteman says, but owning a militia and calling it, example, Whitelandic Army, and fighting in another example, Ukraine, would the government of Kiev recognize the militia? I imagine not. No. So I'm not the biggest military history nerd or like tactician, or I don't know a ton about that, but I do know that historically nations there have been some examples of nations who, for example, support privateers like pirates who, would go and attack their enemies on the open seas and stuff. But a lot of the time, especially in the modern day, you really don't want to support anybody that's not under your side already. Like, if it's not one of you, or it's not one of your people and it's not one of your allies' people, you kind of don't want to have them fighting on your behalf, because if it's just this rogue group that's controlled by someone else that you have no say so over, no authority over, then those people could do something horrible, like burn down an elementary school or bomb a hospital or something like that. And then they would say, people on the Ukraine side bombed a Russian hospital, or killed a whole bunch of Russian kids or something. Not saying that would happen, but that is a possibility. And so I think a lot of the time, nations don't really want to be associated with what they call like third-party actors and stuff like that. It's just not an appropriate thing. There are, however, private military contractors, which is a whole other thing in and of itself, that are hired by governments to do stuff like that. But those also deal with a lot of corruption and a lot of, uncontrolled circumstances, and are kind of a shady tactic to be used and aren't used very much for that reason. Republic of Unity says, we're thinking about making our 1 hour pegged to a half troy ounce of silver. Interesting. Why do you say that? Hit me up. Raz says, the government of Ukraine allows militias, but after the war ends, so will the armies, most likely. Interesting. Y'all are updating me and letting me know stuff that I didn't know. But I imagine that is a difficulty. Like, they're trying to survive, so they're trying to do what they can to just get more support. But also, yeah, you wouldn't want a whole bunch of people just running around shooting at each other without clearly defined, setups for that. Ari says, the problem with moving money from billionaires to the middle class is that it would be illegal to cause major businesses to boycott. It would be illegal and cause major business to boycott. I guess since a lot of millionaires own big companies. Oh, absolutely. That's how they become millionaires and billionaires. But I think that's necessary in order to have a more healthy functioning society. When you have a ton of money being like resources, money being, people's lives of effort dedicated toward adding value to a society that we then denote by these pieces of paper, and you have one person who controls the lives effectively in the entire working history of millions of people at their fingertips, to blow on yachts and parties and frivolous things that that don't matter at all. Buying Twitter.com, it's stupid. And there are much better resources. There are much better places that need those resources. For example, the power grid in Texas could have totally used $40 billion to upgrade their stuff. The education system in the United States could, vastly improve if $40 billion were invested in it. There are so many problems all around the world that we have the opportunity to solve, and we're looking for the money for it. We're like, where are we going to possibly find the funding to do all these things we need to do for our modern societies? Meanwhile, there are billionaires who are sitting on these hoards of wealth, not doing anything with them, because if they did, they wouldn't be billionaires anymore. So they want to hoard as much of that money as they can to keep demand for things as high as possible, so that they can continue to charge people more and more for those services and get their money back. But that's a system that is bound to fail. That is a system that is cataclysmic and dangerous in nature, and one that has to give somewhere. And for decades, it has been the middle and lower classes that have been taking the brunt of that damage, taking the loss of job security, of housing security, of health security, and just general well-being, the quality of life, taking all those hits on their back, while billionaires are continuing to have more and more luxurious and frivolous lives. Republic of Unity says, and the library of everything being a service. Very cool. We've talked about that before, I think, Unity, the concept of a, library economy and stuff like that. That may be a video in itself one day. United Allies of Soviet Republics says, perhaps they would recognize the militia and not the government. Maybe so. YT Zach F says, hi, hey, what's going on, Zach F? How are you? Also, I haven't seen you before. If you're new, we're a micronation. We're trying to help the world and make it a better place one day at a time. And today we're talking about the end of the world. So if you have some ideas, some comments to weigh in on something you're concerned about in life, or just something that you want to know about, please hit us down in the comments and join in the conversation. The Glorious Empire of White Wind said, my dad had $37,000 in his savings, but my parents just got divorced yesterday. Most of that money is going to my mom's lawyer. We're only going to be able to keep like $5,000. First off, I am so sorry about that. Divorce is hard on everyone, especially children. So I am so sorry that you are having to deal with that. I'm sorry that life isn't going well, I imagine, right now, or at very least easy. I'm sure things feel significantly less stable, but I want you to know, first off, that that's not the end of the world. People's parents do get divorced all the time. While it's never good and it never makes it easy that happens, it's still something that people grow through, and that shouldn't affect you as an individual and what your life can become. You have every place to go but up from here, and I just want you to know, emotionally, I'm here for you. I'm trying to support you. So I hope you're doing well. Please keep us updated if you can on how you're doing and how your family's doing. But you're in our thoughts. I'm sorry that's happening. And that's tough. That hurts everybody in a family. The Kingdom of Adam says savings are the lowest and borrowing is at the highest. It's a big problem, yeah. Christian says, Primario does not have a concrete plan in the event of a complete societal and political collapse. The only contingency plan we have thus far involves farming. Makes sense. And I think that's a lot of micronations go to, in general, trying to become independent for a lot of micronations means trying to develop an independent food source. And so farming is one of the go-to things that micronations do, not only to try and develop their own economies, but also to try to preserve their independence. And that's an interesting development culturally in micronationalism, I think. First off, 19 likes, 11 viewers. Thank you guys for pumping up those likes. It means a lot. It really does help to spread the view count to more and more of our audience. Hey, there we go. We got to 20 now. UASR says, dang, Whitewind, hope things get better. Yeah, that was a big bomb he just dropped on us. Whitewind says, TBH, we are doing better without my dad than with him. I'm glad to hear that. That's legitimately, that's important. Not everybody's meant to be together, and that sucks, but you deserve to be happy. Your family deserves to be happy, and I know you all will in the long run. Sometimes things happen in life that we just have to try to move on from and try to get around, but that doesn't affect who you are as a person, and that doesn't affect how important you are in so many people's lives. So thank you for being here with us and taking the time to tell us about your situation. And I know I only hope the best for you, and I think I can represent our audience here in saying that. So we're rooting for you, Whitewind, and we're thinking about you. Please keep us updated when you can. Kingdom of Adam says, there's so much that just grows around that is edible. I feel education of foresting is vital for harmonic sustainability. Absolutely. That's something that's really interesting, because in developing our first territory of Vitae, we bought a 3.5 acre piece of land this past year, and it's completely undeveloped. There's no house on it, there's no water, there's no sewage. We have to do all of that ourselves. And so that being the case, one of the things we've been looking into is doing a little bit of farming ourselves, but we're trying to do so in a way that is supportive of our local ecosystem and, in fact, tries to grow things that are naturally abundant in the area. So we're looking into, mushrooms, things like that. We're looking into different types of little natural wild plants, things like blackberries and stuff that grow here, little local vegetables and stuff like that, specifically different, strains, different types that are specifically bred and raised here locally. So that's something that we're trying to figure out and learn more about, that I personally have just never been well educated in, but I'm trying to learn more and more about. Arik says, I'm glad there's a portion of the micronational community that holds realist values. Absolutely, and I'm glad you're here with us. It's hard. It's hard as a micronation, because we have the video, realist versus fantasy micronations. We've talked a lot about micronational economics. We have a lot of videos on that. We have a lot of videos about developing culture. But micronations are such a diverse concept. It's everybody from people who are secessionists to people who are, historians and history buffs, to people who are creating like role play, like clubs effectively, mock you in groups. It's all over the board as to what a micronation is. Some are like political activist movements. What a micronation is. Some are religious organizations. They're all over the place. So I appreciate you being here with us and trying to dissect and figure out what micronationalism means to you, because I have, through this channel, reflected what micronationalism means to me and what the Aeternian values for micronationalism are, and how we're kind of expressing that into the community. And we've gotten a lot of positive support on our ideas, but more importantly, I've been able to see the huge development of micronationalism since I've been around, and the feedback that you all have given me. You guys have taught me a lot about what it means to be a micronation and shared your thoughts and your nation's developments. And that really has a huge impact as well. So the more that I get to learn about you guys, the more that it helps to educate me. Vincent says, oh, AP, when I get my paycheck from work, I can start paying my taxes again in Aeternia. Hey, that means the world, Vincent. I also, I know you said you got a job recently, so this may cause some difficulties. This summer, I want to do something in Vitae. Hell or high water, we're doing something in Vitae. We're throwing a party. We're getting something together. We haven't been able to do anything on Vitae for the past year that we've had it. We've been sitting on it, trying to build up any kind of money we can, trying to build up any kind of economic value that we can. And now that we've got a smidge, and we're not doing well, we're still struggling, but we're starting to get our feet on the ground. We're starting to do some stuff. We're starting to make a little progress. I want to do something. Vincent, I know you're in Georgia. We will find a way to meet up if you want to, if you have the ability, if your parents are cool with it. Let's set something up. Let's get a meeting in Vitae. Let's get something going. I'm excited to do something as well. We can just send you stuff. Like if let's message at some point. I'll hit you up on Discord. I want to do something. I want to reach out to one of our more local citizens and try to develop something with you. I know you've been interested in doing flag stuff for a while, but you've got this job. I'm sure that takes a lot of time. So let's do something. Let's figure out how we as an Aeternian community could come together a little bit more in person and try and do something. We can plan it months and months out. It doesn't have to be something super concrete right now, but I just want to make more of an impact in your life, and I want you to feel more a part of the Aeternian community. So I'm excited to do stuff. Christian says, speaking of the power grid, it infuriates me that the governor of Texas prioritized busing immigrants to distant cities rather than upgrading the grid. Yeah, I completely agree. That was the same thing. Governor Greg Abbott in Texas pulled a weird stunt. It cost like millions of dollars, like literally, I think it was like 10 million or like 50, it was like a significant amount of money that he cost to fly immigrants. They got people who were like illegally crossing the border, and they took them from these like holding cells effectively in Texas where they were, and they loaded them up onto planes and told them that they would be graciously accepted into these communities in Martha's Vineyard, which is like a wealthy community, and I'm gonna get it wrong, I think it's like in Virginia or like upstate New York or something like that. And just told these people, hey, like, we'll drop you off here. They're going to love you. And so all of these, like, families from Mexico and other Latin American countries are very, like, confused and scared and, like, feeling like they're going about the normal system for processing in the U.S. And, in fact, they get dropped off in, like, a neighborhood and just kind of left. And the people... the people in that community like accept them. They tried to do everything that they could to like make sure those people were like fed and housed and clothed, and they set up like emergency like tents and stuff, and emergency like community, they're like community rec centers and stuff were like, and churches and stuff were like dedicated for like a couple weeks to taking care of these people who had been dropped off there as like a prank, all during the like Texas power grid stuff. Like when he was supposedly needing to be repairing this for their community, he was instead doing this like multi-million-dollar prank with the government's money. So that's a huge scandal and a huge problem in my opinion. But that is something that's really sad to see. That he felt that that was a better use of his time, and would be something that would get him reelected more so than actually solving problems for people in the great state of Texas. Absolutely a shame, and something that the people of Texas should keep an eye on as well. I think the people of Texas, Governor Abbott's not stupid. It's not like he doesn't know that that's going to be pandering to his audience. He wouldn't do that if he didn't feel like that was the more probable thing to get him elected. So I think the voters in Texas need to be more conscious and more aware of, hey, this guy's fucking us over. Like, excuse my language, but this guy's not treating us well. We need someone better in office. But it's a big partisan game, and that sucks. Whitewind says, Whitewind now has a colony in England. Ooh, crossing the pond out here. Whitewind is making big leaps. Good job, Whitewind. Keep us updated. Let us know how your colony's going. Kingdom of Adam says, Targon theory. Toxic environment equals toxicity in the life forms. Tyrian theory. Makes sense. I would agree with that. We're causing problems everywhere else, and we live there. Of course, we're going to cause problems with ourselves. Ari says, Christian, you should improve your power grids before sending immigrants to distant cities. Agreed. Ari and Christian are on the same boat. They know what they're talking about. And I agree. I'm in the same, but I think that was gross. Finnish German says, Kingsland, my micronation, would be dead in a second. That's fair. Talking about the apocalypse, talking about problems there, that's something that I'm concerned about as well. Like, we have Vitae, we would try to do something, but honestly, if a nuclear bomb dropped, there's nothing that we could do. Like, we're not going to be like, oh, we've got the perfect plan to be all right, because that's not the case. That wouldn't be what would happen. It would be a devastating thing for Aeternia, and more importantly for humanity in general. So yes, we're not necessarily saying here's how you survive the apocalypse, but what do you think would be something that would bring about the apocalypse? What are you most concerned about? And what do you think you can do today to improve the lives of your citizens and potentially reduce the likelihood of that? Finnish Germans, what in your mind is the biggest worry of yours? What's the biggest thing that is your adversary as a micronation? The thing that you want us as micronations to team up around the world to solve? What's our big mission? Whitewind says, Whitewind has its own generator. My brother made the magnets and I winded up the copper. Hey, yo, congrats. Whitewind doing physics moves, doing engineering moves. And it produces quite a bit of electricity. It runs off its own electricity and powers 2 houses. Hold up. Whitewind, can you send me a picture of this? Can you send me video of this? I just do electrical engineering and physics. Please hit me up. You must be generating literal kilowatts of power. That 2 houses? You're running 2 houses completely on their own, or what? Like, how big is this thing? Because I have a transformer that's literally like from the like 3 or 4 feet tall, like a just huge metal cube, and that thing weighs hundreds of pounds. That I don't think could run 2 houses. That's a lot. So I'm just curious. Hit me up. Whitewind says, I shocked myself like 5 times making it. Why would you shock yourself? I guess testing it, if it's pulling that much voltage, it wouldn't even be about the volt. You'd run it at like 240 volts or whatever, 120, depending on where you're at. But what? You shocked yourself. How'd you shock it? It shouldn't have been on. It shouldn't have been producing power until it's turning, right? And then, as long as you don't touch the output wires, you shouldn't shock yourself. And those output wires should be at 120 or 240 or whatever your thing is. Union of Allied Soviet Republics says, we've been building up our volunteer militia so we can do various things like helping the community remain secure from anyone who wants to take away our security. Oh, goodness. First off, be careful doing that. Micronations like to do that all the time. They'll create like militaries and militias and stuff like that. And while I get it for like ceremonial purposes, if you want to do something for your culture or whatever, and to preserve, to promote your independence, whatever, that's cool. be careful. Some people do view that as a threat, and I think you really should go about trying to make it clear in all of your messaging that you're not trying to pose a threat to anybody. Because when people see, groups that they're not familiar with walking around carrying guns and doing training exercises and stuff, they don't know if you're a terrorist organization. They don't know, if you're like trying to police your local community. They don't know what you're doing. So be very careful with that, and definitely make sure you have the right support, especially if you're underage. Excuse me, especially if you're underage. That's a big deal. Arik says, if only the military we spent money more sparingly. We're certified to do certain maintenance and service parts of ships. However, Navy pays contractors instead. Oh, absolutely. Part of that is because of the way that it's set up. So the contractors will come in and say, hey, your ships need to be the latest and greatest, otherwise Russia's or China's gonna have your back in a minute. So you keep, you have the largest budget in the world if you're talking about the U.S. military. So you obviously want to have the best equipment. We have this latest and greatest new piece of equipment that'll upgrade you, that'll make you certain to be the most competitive. However, you're going to need to hire us to not only install and maintain the equipment, but you're also going to need to have a contract with us for so many years out to continue repairs on that and diagnostics and stuff for that maintenance. So that's a big thing to discuss. Give me 1 second, guys. I gotta answer a call. I will be back momentarily. Hello, everybody. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Ooh, we got 18 viewers, 21 likes. Tiffany just showed up. I was waiting for her after class. I appreciate you guys hanging out. Everybody says that the streams are really long. This one's just an hour, so it's a little bit better. Let me know what you guys are thinking. Everybody says lots of interest chats. I'll hit you guys up later on. Everybody have a good day, and Aeternia forever. See you guys soon. Also, hit us up in the Discord and stuff. We have a Patreon, all that to try and help us out if you want to. We have an Etsy where you can get on our aristocrat board, which is all the people who have ever donated to our economy. She's pulling me. All right, gotta go. See you guys.